Good evening, magical friends. Welcome to Psychic Couple Reacts.
Yes.
I am psychic medium, Trance Channel Shaman, Riz the Wiz, here with my lovely twin flame other half,
Lady O, and I'm an intuitive empath, and welcome to our show.
So what are we talking about tonight?
Yeah, tonight we're going to talk about reincarnation and past lives.
Oh, yes. I can't wait to dive into this.
I have personal experiences I want to share, of course.
We have to talk about personal experiences because what are we going to do? Just recite things from just old knowledge? We all know what reincarnation is. But
I mean, I wasn't raised knowing exactly what reincarnation was, but as I found out later, you know.
Well, traditional religion, they don't really teach that.
Right.
I grew up in an Indian culture where my parents didn't talk about reincarnation, but it was known in the culture. There are expressions, there are casual expressions in Hindi, which a language I spoke growing up as well in the Bronx.
Give a shout out to your Bronx friends in Hindi.
None of my Bronx friends speak Hindi.
But what about if there's some Indian people in the Bronx watching you right now?
अच्छा सारे मेरे जो यारों हैं Bronx में मेरी तरफ से बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया कि आप लोग ये program देख रहे हैं. How's that? That good?
Perfect.
Isn't that crazy how I jump into that?
Do you know, I just want to hear you do that for like hours. Hours.
I wonder if I speak Hindi with a Bronx accent. That would be funny. Probably my cousins would be able to tell me.
That I have never thought of.
So there's a first.
You need to ask your Hindi people right now who speak Hindi. Does he have a Bronx accent? We want to know. Put it in the comments.
Well, we do have some people watching us in India. Anyway.
Yes.
So reincarnation is part of the cultural understanding in India, right? Because from Hinduism to Buddhism to Jainism, also the laws of karma are in Sikhism as well. So the conversation goes, and people just say, "Oh, it must have been a past life thing." That's an actual expression in the language of Hindi, but we don't really have that in English, do we? Well, maybe we are now because now everybody's like awakening to a higher consciousness.
Yeah, totally. And we love it. Yeah, I personally, when I found out about past lives and reincarnation, it was so foreign to me, completely new concept, didn't know what it was.
Do you remember how you found out about it?
Yes, I actually it was in my early 20s, believe it or not, but I didn't know exactly. I didn't have as much information as I do now, but back in my 20s, what I was guided to was a hypnotherapist who did past life regressions.
Yes.
And they said, she did also a little futuristic, or I don't know, how would you call it? It's not a regression.
She went into future lifetimes.
Also, yes, right? So I went to go see her, and her house looked like this times like...
Oh, don't make me jealous.
No, she had like spiders, like tarantulas in frames, butterflies. Oh, she had that kind of... It's almost gothic, but
we had butterflies in frames in our bathroom once.
But it was like a Phineas Quimby laboratory.
Wow.
It was crazy. I walked in and I almost turned around and walked right back out.
Because for you back, little did you know your own house was going to look like that one day. Did she tell you that in your future life reading? You will be married to a psychic medium trance channeling spirit guides, and your house will also have butterflies in frames.
No comment.
Edgar Allan Poe and Raven and Medusa statues, and I still don't know what this hand is about. But anyway, we're going to talk about our experiences.
So you know who influenced the decor? But I'm one with the decor now. We are both. Well,
this is our style.
This.
Yeah, I mean, this is our style.
But I didn't start out this way.
What do we call our style? Should we call it
this is
urban psychic?
No, it's
rock
called
urban psychic?
Rock and roll goth.
No.
Psychic.
It's not goth. Just because it's Edgar Allan Poe is there?
Well, I mean, it has...
Because our hardcore goth friends will be like, Riz and Oriah, you guys aren't goth.
Honestly, it's mystical.
Yes.
It's mystical.
Magical.
There's a manner.
Psychic,
but now we're not giving it a name. Now we're just saying what it is.
Let's call it... You guys can come up with a cool name for a style because it's very important to me at this stage of my life.
What do you think
that I have a name for my style.
What is the name of our style? We don't know, actually, as you can tell.
One of my clients is a stylist in the movie industry.
We should ask her.
Well, she asked me one time, she goes, how would you classify your style?
Yeah.
Right? And I started...
That's a good question.
I started naming the most random things, and she's like,
Okay, so it's a cross between Harry Potter, vampires...
Really?
Right? No, vampires are sleek. Like minimalism, right? In the movies, they are anyway.
Okay, let's talk about your past life memories.
Oh my
Okay, so
God,
you have memories.
so embarrassing.
I'm going to ask you some questions.
Yes.
How about this for tonight?
But I would like to share my moments.
Oh yeah, it's just going to be like,
Yeah.
do you remember some past lives? How did you remember them?
Well, you have.
Where would you like to jump off on this conversation?
Well, first of all, I want to, before I jump off, I want to tell you. I got
you
my
have notes.
handy dandy
She got her notes.
notebook. So
I've never looked once in that book because I'm a
No,
husband
you're
that
not
respects your
allowed
privacy.
to do that. So yeah, this has all of our topic conversations here, and I am very excited to get into it. But I want to share with you my story. So I walked in and I was nervous. This was a part of it. I don't know why, but I just felt like I had to say that part because it was so like otherworldly at the time.
Oh, when you
for
went
me.
to the past life regression therapist's
When
house.
I went to her house,
got
yeah,
it.
she was on the beach in like Laguna Beach, this very unusual house. And I was already like really nervous. But anyway, her office was incredible. Her office, I have to describe it to you off camera one time. Okay, so there was a couch and I laid on the couch, very traditional, and she started guiding me, right? And, you know, lo and behold, I'm very open and easy to be guided in that way. So I let it go and I went.
Wow.
And I found so many past lives. I think it was about 4 different past lives that I actually experienced. So when I experienced them, and I'm going to say one in particular. So, well, let me just say what happened and then I'll tell you how what the experience was like. So I was looking down at my feet. This is how it started. So I fell asleep, I guess, or I was hypnotized. And then all of a sudden, I was looking at my shoes.
All right.
And my shoes, because my feet I'm a size 9.
Okay.
And in this image, or how, I didn't know I was dreaming or where I was. I just was looking at my shoes standing up, and my feet were so tiny, really, really small.
Oh.
And they had this like pioneer style, like 1800s kind of like the little buttons on the side and the laces and like the color brown and the leather. And I recognized those shoes from that era. And I went, these aren't my feet. Whose feet are these? And I was looking down and she was talking to me from far away. And I heard her saying, what do you see? What do you see?
Her voice was growing distant.
Distant, very distant. And I started to feel this cool breeze. I felt like this cool air, like it was just kind of blowing around. And I started to look around and I said, I'm in this big open, like, pasture or something, like green everywhere. And she says, okay, great. And so what do you see? Look down and tell me what you see. And I looked down and I saw all like small feet, small hands. And I saw this prairie dress.
Wow.
And I could not believe what I was seeing. And I was just like, I started to almost hyperventilate, and she calmed me down. And because I couldn't believe that I was actually experiencing this. And I started describing, and I was able to move my body.
Were things moving, or was it like a static picture?
No, it was not static. I actually
like a movie.
felt like my hair was blowing. Like I felt like sensation. And
you're laying on a couch.
I'm laying on a couch, but I didn't even know I was laying on the couch because I went so deep in so fast. She told me after I went over an hour, and she says I went deeper than most of her clients. Of course, no surprise.
Right.
But,
being an empath,
exactly.
Of course, you're just going to let it all happen.
Right. So I was able to really go there. But there was more lives we jumped around. She goes, and then what do you see here and what do you see there? And there were some traumatizing ones.
Were there feelings, emotional feelings that
deeply
you felt
emotional
when you saw the shoes?
Yes. I immediately felt what was happening in that moment. And I knew that I was on the like the Oklahoma run or something. And I did some genealogy and I checked it out on ancestry.com. And it turns out my entire family did the Oklahoma run.
So do you think that you were your own ancestor?
I think I was reincarnated in this family line for sure. I stayed in this line, in the same family line.
So that's interesting, right? Because guys, when you reincarnate, you're not, as you probably have already surmised, you don't come back as the same ethnicity all the time.
No.
You come back looking different.
Well,
So,
I found out that I had mostly male lives, turns out, but I'm also not surprised.
Right, so different genders, right?
So I've been having a lot of fun being female, 5 children, married a few times, enjoying playing around being a woman.
Really
like
feeling
really
what it's like being a woman. Yeah, that is really fascinating because I do feel that we have tendencies and inclinations from certain past lives that maybe we either really liked or we have some unfinished business from that lifetime.
Well, the unfinished business part, I think, is the most important part of why we even study reincarnation or want to understand it.
Right.
Is because it's not, some people think it's just for like novelty, and they think it's just to like know that you had lives that existed outside of the one
because
you're in
people
now.
do come to, sometimes they'll come for a psychic reading, and I can tell when they ask me, what was I in a past life?
Yeah, because they want to be told like, you were an Eskimo, or you were like Cleopatra, or
I've gotten
Queen
a lot
Elizabeth,
of people who felt that. I've had a lot of people who thought that they were Cleopatra or a pharaoh. A lot of Native
I thought
Americans.
I was Mary Magdalene.
A lot of women have told me that they really believe they were Mary Magdalene.
And I asked Red Eagle, and he said,
no, because they haven't reincarnated.
Right.
But what that is, just kind of like, it's still on the topic. I don't want to diverge too much on the topic, but what some of the guides have said is that those archetypes are so strong in terms of how we would like to how we see ourselves and qualities that we want to embody. It's almost like our idols, right? And so we relate to that, and then we think we are that.
Right.
Now you are that quality, you just weren't that particular person.
I think that is a good gateway that gets you interested in the topic,
Yeah.
to want to know
Yes,
more.
exactly.
And as I went further, and I checked off all the things that I thought I was, and I found out I wasn't, through either our own meditations, or even when we do our journeying, we've had some experiences which
Sure.
we have to share that. And also talking to the guides and asking them directly, was I this incarnate? Like, I thought I was Teddy Roosevelt.
Well, there was,
actually, believe it or not.
Yes.
And no, but there was characteristics I related to with his personality.
so you're coming back in these different ethnicities, but also it's possible that you incarnated in different worlds.
Yeah, now that is exciting.
So who says you were just incarnated on Earth?
Right.
You could be incarnated on a planet that's 10,000 light years away, or maybe just Venus
if I
right
want
over
to
here.
scramble everybody's brain, we're probably living there right now anyway.
Well, that's a dimensional talk.
That's dimensional.
Okay,
But let's talk
where this linear
goes.
time.
Yeah, we have to stay away from that area, because
That's another conversation. But remember something, there's different realities where linear time is the reality.
Right. So we'll stick to linear time,
We're
because that's
talking
our
to-
agreement that we have here on planet Earth. We
Planet
all
Earth,
have agreed to linear time.
Linear time.
And only exists here on this planet as far as we
Right,
know. And
we
any other
age.
civilizations maybe out there that does like time. But from what we have heard from not only your channeling, but multiple channels around the world, there is no time on other planets. This is really a human.
Or maybe there is on
Earth.
some planets. No, there's
Maybe
time on other planets, just maybe not on all dimensions.
Right.
Because we have had channelings where from not only myself, but other channelers who have channeled extraterrestrial beings that said, yes, we do have time,
Seasons,
but they have,
They have a
for
different
example,
way.
they have different suns. So there are planets where they do measure time by the movement of the celestial bodies around them, or them moving around their sun, because many, many star systems have life on them. And those are planets going around a sun, going around a star, but it takes longer. So their concept of a year might be 10 years to us,
Right,
because of the
exactly.
slower pace.
So it's a totally different
So they
time.
do have time.
Yeah.
But speaking of jumping from one body to another, okay, so reincarnation being that you are now going to take another ethnicity, perhaps another gender.
Well, when I did the mirror work in our journeys, our sacred shamanic.
Well, tell them
plant
what mirror
medicine
work
journeys.
is.
Well, I accidentally found out what mirror work is. I mean, there is mirror work in different capacities. You could do it in workshops for transformational workshops and stuff, but you're not consuming anything. But I had consumed psilocybin. We were in a shamanic plant medicine journey, and I remember going up to the bathroom upstairs, and I remember the first time I ever did this before, and I looked in the mirror, and I saw all these different faces looking back at me. And so the first one I saw was like an African warrior with a spear and very fierce, which I was intimidated and absolutely fascinated by. And I felt the kinship there. Then an older woman with like tons of lines.
Now,
and
how did you
cracks
know
and-
that was you?
Well, the first thing I thought to myself was like, well, why are all these people here? What are all these faces looking back at me in the mirror? And so as I pondered that question and zoned in and looked in the eyes, I started to see there was no break or shift or any kind of separate experience with these beings. They seemed to be too one with me, like too close. It was almost like I started to get this feeling like I think I'm looking at my other versions of myself. And I loved it. But I recommend it all the time to everybody to do that.
Yeah.
If you can't do plant medicine journey, I mean, there's other things you can do.
Of course.
Cow ceremonies, and there's different
deep
things
meditation, sound healing. There's whatever. Look, it's not just through those plant medicine ceremonies, but it's also through other shamanic rituals. We're saying shamanic rituals. We're just talking about meditative and whatever is ancestral to your particular level of understanding, right? Or your culture, excuse me. So I've had mirror work where I looked in the mirror and I was in that state, that altered state, and I did see different beings. I'm talking about beings. I saw an alien, really, quite literally. I was looking in the mirror and I began to, first I felt like I was getting taller. So I started fixing my posture. And then it felt like this was more than just fixing your posture. There was like, my spine was growing. And I literally felt that I was maybe 9 to 11 feet tall. There was a great sense of strength in there. And I was looking at my own hands like in amazement that, oh, what form is this that I'm taking?
Right.
But the thought was one with me. Now, as a channeler, I know the difference between a spirit guide or an entity entering my body. I know what that feels like. This was different. This was my consciousness was observing itself. Meaning I am consciousness, but I'm just talking about my personality was observing itself almost from a new personality. So I was looking and saying, well, what have I become now? And looking at myself. That's how I was looking at myself. Look what I've become. So, but then when I looked in the mirror, I saw my face change. It looked like a different kind of alien. So this is how I knew that this was me. This wasn't somebody I knew in a different lifetime or dimension. This wasn't some entity that was, trying to take me over.
Right.
And it is so mind-blowing to have that personal experience.
Well, people have asked me many times, how can I find out what my past life is? Or how can I feel it? So I'm going to give you an example of one thing that you and I experienced and how it translated into our regular daily life, and how that can also affect you too if you also let your past lives speak to you. So I'm not going to go into a lot of personal detail because it's very personal, but I will tell you, we will talk a little bit about it. So Riz and I one time were sitting in the couch and we were journeying, and it was in the early days when we first got together. And all of a sudden, I'll never forget it for as long as I live. There was this moment where I was like sitting back, and all of a sudden my body like lurched forward, and then I threw myself back and I started laughing, and I was
like, very hearty laugh.
Like that. I was like, so darling, here we are again. And that's why I love doing that accent, because that was her accent. And then I didn't know who was talking through me. And then you responded with the same laugh.
But very dry.
And very like low and like rolling your like,
oh, well, darling, here we are again. So we remembered together a past life we had in 1800s England.
Yeah.
Where we were part of this. We weren't aristocratic, we were kind of like somewhere between that and not, like not
we were
there.
Invited to the aristocratic parties.
You just got the invite.
Yeah, we'd go home and talk about it.
You got in by the skin of your teeth to the party. We were like those people.
And we were shorter.
Which
was funny because we're so tall.
Yeah.
You're 6'3".
I'm 6'3". You're almost 5'11".
So we were really, really, petite, both of us.
Yeah.
And we were robust and funny, and we were hilarious.
And we remembered ourselves much older.
We were older.
What would you say, 65? 67,
and
around that age?
it was in London, and we lived in the city. And how did we know all this? Well, what happened was, while we started talking, we literally started talking to each other as if we came back from that time period and caught up with each other and said, okay, well, here we go again.
Yeah, we put our arms around each other like this, and we're leaning back on the couch, and we were like, okay, so here we are. Here we are living in Los Angeles, California.
And it was so funny. And we were making jokes, and the jokes were hilarious.
Yeah.
And then we started to get the download and started to understand that this was actually one of our past lives.
Yeah.
So fast forward all these years later, it's almost as if there's like a shadow, or like It feels like they're with us. This version of us is always with us, and they're like our humor, our sense of humor. They're the partiers. They're the ones that like to have a good time and like to get into society and like have fun
mingle
and everything. And oh my God, like they've enhanced our lives in so many ways because we know that version of us, and we're absolutely obsessed with anything from that time period, especially if it's in England.
It's really interesting because there are many things that you guys
and we understand it. Like all the foods, and so do I.
Well, you're drawn to objects and even architecture and things that you'll find that these are things that are from a past life, which brings me to
like you and I will go do those tours, those historic tours of those older homes, every city we go to.
But do you recall? There have been now children who remember past lives. Now, these documentaries are now on YouTube, which are amazing. You got to just type in children who remember their past lives. I think there's a documentary called exactly that.
Right.
So where people didn't take reincarnation so seriously before, there was a great book written by Brian Weiss called Many Lives, Many Masters. It is a classic book. You guys, I'm sure some of you have read it. If not, go order it. Many Lives, Many Masters.
Yes.
The second book you should order is by Michael Newton called Journey of the Soul. Now, these two books deal with different things.
Yep.
Brian Weiss was treating his patients. I believe he was a psychiatrist, and he was using hypnotherapy to figure out, go back to their childhood and talk about the relationships they had with their parents to figure out how to deal with the traumas they had and make their lives better now. Except some of the people who were getting under hypnosis were remembering stuff from 400 years ago and that mom and dad.
Yes. Now, the ones that I want to talk about are from a TV show from, I think it's called LMV, is the channel,
network.
The network. Yeah. LMN.
LMN.
Yeah. And the host's name, and he's a hypnotherapist, is Damien Bertrand.
Yes.
And so it's called Past Lives, I believe. And it's amazing because he will, transgress. Is that how you say it?
He will lead people in.
And they go in.
Yeah, he regresses them.
He regresses them. Yeah. And they go back into these states.
Yes.
Then he goes and he takes the names, the dates, the information that they gave him. He goes to the county record.
Yes.
He actually researches and finds.
He goes through a lot of archives and finds the proof that they did.
The census and all the, records of them.
So basically, he puts them under hypnosis. They're on the couch, and then he leads them back in through time, and they bring up a lifetime. They say, I'm standing somewhere. I'm looking at a house. And then he says, well, what year is it? And the person actually answers. Yeah. Then he says, describe what you look like. They describe it. Then he goes, what's your name? So he writes all this stuff down. Then they leave. And they research this all for 2 weeks.
Right.
Call the people back, show them the video of them under hypnosis, which they never remember.
Well, the best part is...
And he proves that this person did exist.
With the exact...
name.
All of it.
Do you remember any that really jumped out at you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, there was one where the guy that was being put under started speaking in French. And he doesn't speak French. And he brought his sister.
He knew phrases.
Yeah. Well, no, he was dialoguing with the host because the host he's Canadian French. And so he brought his sister to do the playback, to watch the hypnotherapy. And she says, well, I'm Christian. I don't really believe in all this, but I'll just be here. And so he started regressing, or he was watching himself regress, and he couldn't believe what he was witnessing because he was speaking in French.
Yes.
To the host. And the host is responding in French,
I think I remember
and asking
this,
him questions. And so they got the name, they got the location, the date, everything. He went back and checked the census and all the archives, and found the exact person, the exact location, the language, everything was accurate. And this guy's from I think he was from Wisconsin or something.
What's interesting about that show, it kind of leads to, well, why is it even important to talk about these past lives? Here's why. There's certain things you're experiencing in your life that it's like the unfinished business from that past life. Some people have a fear of something. It could be a fear of water, a fear of falling, that they go, this is completely unfounded. I have no traumas with falling.
Yeah.
Why did this happen? And many times when they get a past life regression and the therapist doesn't know the situation, they lead them back and they find that this person did die from a fall in
Right.
a past life. And sometimes you even have the physical mark
Yeah, the birthmark.
of where they hurt themselves.
Or
And
the
now, as a
last
medium,
injury.
I have told people on the phone, I've never seen them in person. Sometimes I see the past life, and I'll say something like, so how's your, left elbow? Because I see something where they either some accident happened or some violence happened in a past life, and they go, it's been a problem my whole life. Or they'll say, I have a kind of I'm missing something in my left elbow, and I've had a
Or
birth
a mark
defect.
or something.
Yes. So what is that, right? I mean, it's clear that we just keep continuing.
Yeah. So I think like I said earlier when we first started, what this is pointing to is I think we're working out and solving or completing a lot of karmic debt or feelings
Yes.
and emotions that don't quite match our current life.
Yes.
I'll give you an example. I was helping Erica one time. For those of you who are just tuning in, welcome. But we are talking about Erica, our assistant. So she told me about a bunch of things that were going on with her emotionally. And then as we tracked it back into her life, we realized it didn't match actually anything that she really lived. It was like deeper. It was more profound.
Yeah.
It was like, didn't match the like location she lived, the culture she was raised in, as we became more and more introspective. And we started to go deep enough until we started to realize that this is a lot of past life stuff. So I'll give you, she would love that I give her examples. So she has one of her favorites, and my favorite past life is Marcus. And Marcus was like a merchant seller in Italy, and it was like in the 1700s, and he was like half pirate and half merchant seller, but he was just really kind of a naughty guy and hilarious and a swindler, and he had like the black mustache and the whole thing, and it was so, and this whole like the hat to the side, and he's such a character, and every now and then that character will come out. Like I'll see that in her.
Yes.
And she laughs because she doesn't know where it comes from. But she sees a lot of like some of her things that she works on herself is not from this normal life that she had.
Yes.
So that's what I find the most interesting, is that if you start to really look at yourself from these third eye, multiple eyes, like different eyes, you start to see yourself in these different perspectives. You can almost start to feel different personas inside of you, but it's kind of more vibrational. I don't think you can't visually see it necessarily. It's not like we're like seeing images. I can, if I tune in, I can see those two characters that we're those two people. So I was Lisbeth and you were Richard, because we tried to make our names sound a little more fancy than they were. And I think, can see them in our third eye, but I don't think necessarily everybody can see visually what their past lives look like.
No, that's why we go to people who either regress us, so we see that. I mean,
Definitely.
It's definitely worth it in your life, guys, to find a good past life regression hypnotherapist and do a session and record it, of course, so that you might find out some things and connect some dots that you've been trying to connect.
Yeah.
For myself, I've had past life experiences in meditation where I've had glimpses. I can't say that I had full out movies playing, but I did have, I call them postcards from the other side. I've seen the postcards, you might say. I've seen who was where, meaning you have people that you travel with through different lifetimes. I actually call those people soulmates, because most people think soulmates is the person you fall in love with. Soulmates, I define them as people who are, everybody's a soul. They're your mates. They've been traveling with you through different lifetimes, and they take different roles on. There have been, this information has come through in a lot of regression sessions, also through mediums, where I'll say to someone in a reading, who is Nancy? And then the person will say, that's my boss. Or they'll say, that's my boss. And I'll go, oh, that's interesting because this person was, your kid's sister and you were always bossing them around. Or I'll start off with that. I'll say, whoever this Nancy is, you were always bossing them around. And then they tell me, that's my boss now. So you reverse the roles. Sometimes,
a lot of times that happens.
I know, it's weird because sometimes I've told people that, who's Mike? And they go, they're like, why? And I'm like, because that was your husband. And they're like, that's my brother now.
Yeah.
I mean, they hate when I say, when those things come up, but
That
it's
happens a
true.
lot. Yeah.
We are coming back in different roles.
And it's just I think it's to complete
A cycle.
Yeah,
right?
and complete things that we're working on inside of ourselves that we're trying to like not just overcome, but understand
Yes.
and evolve.
Yes.
And so I think that that's what's happening. Also, I wanted to mention there was a couple movies that were really good reincarnation movies.
Which ones?
I would like to mention them because I think that maybe, some people have seen them or they would like to see some movies. So the first one is, and I cannot see, Edge of Tomorrow. So that's, I believe, the one with Tom Cruise.
Edge of Tomorrow.
And if I'm wrong, you guys can correct me, but it's the one where Tom Cruise kept trying to get this one mission correct.
Oh,
and he couldn't get it correct.
Yeah.
So he kept dying each mission, and he kept dying in different places. I loved it so much. I actually want to watch it again.
I do remember that movie.
Yeah. And he just would go further and further and get further and further in the mission until finally he accomplished his mission, which is very telling for like how past lives, I believe, work.
There was a movie that,
That's one of them.
yeah, I want to hear what the other ones were.
So Cloud Atlas.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, Nicole Kidman.
Okay.
So that one was wild, and that was it was hard for me to remember the plot line on that one because it was like
You have to watch
cinematic.
it twice, Cloud Atlas, to follow along.
Yeah.
Wasn't there one with Christopher Reeve a long time ago?
Somewhere Before Time.
Somewhere Before Time.
Yeah, but that is, I think, a twin flame.
But isn't it they reincarnated? Yeah, they
Not
followed each other through different
necessarily.
lifetimes, didn't they?
Yes, but it was based on this one particular lifetime, the twin flame aspect of it, but they didn't follow into the current day.
Oh,
and then Groundhog Day, which was cute and fun, but it was really actually.
But that's not
very-
reincarnation.
It's not, but it has the principles of getting it right.
So the law of karma,
because he kept asking her out and she kept saying no. And
amongst other things in that movie.
Yeah, it was really cute and silly and fun, but it has a good message. So he was so annoyed and so disturbed and so discouraged.
Yeah.
And he just kept trying and kept trying, like, oh my God, again. And so he kept doing it over and over until finally he kept learning from the past.
So the learning from the past is there to lead you to what we call in India moksha, which is the liberation, the freedom from having to incarnate again on Earth or in some form that's still learning through that contrast struggle. So you have that freedom. What is the resolve? We're always going to be asking ourselves, why do we have to reincarnate? I kind of look at it in a broad sense. It's like, well, it's actually part of nature, a much bigger definition of nature. You might say that since matter can only be, change form or whatever, or trees die and then they are coming back. That's just part of nature. We accept it. That, things grow through the soil again. In a much bigger sense, I want to say in the cosmic sense, that's how we see reincarnation in some of these cultures. And the freedom from having to do it is interesting because you go, okay, well, so you've got the freedom from having to do it. Well, then now what do you do? Okay, never incarnating again. So where are you hanging out? There's a place, right? Now that's where the book Journey of Souls comes in by Michael Newton. So where Brian Weiss was hypnotizing people,
she's gonna want to come
and
on
seeing
your
the
lap, just
past
let her.
lives. Well, the cat
She's
is
not gonna
here.
take
She's like,
notes,
I have
that's
9 lives. Come on then. Okay, the cat's going to jump up here. All right, so where Brian Weiss's book was about people remembering their past lives,
right?
And they're speaking from it. So the person's under the hypnosis and saying to Brian, I'm standing at a river, and there's one scene in it where the woman is saying, we're all getting sick and dehydrated, so we're drinking, water from the river, but nobody knows it's the river that's dehydrating them. The water's contaminated. That's interesting because now she died in that lifetime where the water was polluted and everybody got dysentery or whatever and died, but she's transported from this lifetime and now has the knowledge that, oh my God, it was the river itself that was poisoning us, and we kept going back to the river trying to hydrate.
Well, it's funny you were talking about water, and I know it's not related, but like in this lifetime, you have a fear and I have a fear that are unfounded. So you have a fear of drowning, and I have a fear of fire.
Yeah.
Like really bad.
Yeah, and everyone in my family swam, and there's no reason for me. I didn't have any trauma about water.
I can't even light a barbecue grill.
Yeah.
Get so scared.
So here's what, if you can find a hypnotherapist or a past life regression therapist that can help you kind of go back to that point in time and change the reaction, people go, oh my God, are we talking about changing the past? I thought you can't change the past. Well, you can
You
can
can
certainly alter the
reprogram yourself.
effect of the past on the present.
I think you
right?
can reprogram yourself for sure.
And then since everything is the way you are processing information, that's what your entire reality is. You're processing everything you experience. So of course you can now change that. And technically you might call that changing the past. So karma. Do you think that what you do in past lives, whether you're good or bad, affects this lifetime?
Yes, I do. And I think it's because, I'll give you an example. I was a very sweet, innocent little girl growing up, like most kids are. But I had a streak in me that was latent.
What was that streak?
I was rebellious.
Oh, yeah.
And
I know
wild,
about that part.
like big time. Like didn't listen to anybody. Told everybody to F off. Like whatever. That came out later. Came out of nowhere. Came from somewhere. Wasn't anybody in my family. I mean, it wasn't like my parents.
So were you like some gunslinger in the Old West?
Totally. I know I was like hardcore.
I actually could see that.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. And I definitely relate to those characters when I see them in movies. But so, yeah, I think
Can I tell you what one of mine that's going to blow your mind? I remember giving birth.
But oh my God. Okay, I'll get to that in 1 second. But
you want to make that one? You should wait. I remember giving birth. Okay, fine. I'm going to put that one on hold. Go ahead.
Well, I was in the middle of saying something.
All right, go ahead.
I forgot.
I know we're getting all excited, but go ahead. Tell me.
Okay, I'm going to see if I can remember now. When you do that, I get thrown off and I can't remember.
Who would get thrown off by their husband saying that they remember giving birth? That's weird. Okay.
Oh my God. Okay, so you asked about the karma and I was answering your question. So yes, that's what happens is that I not only saw this rebellious side of me and lived it, but then I realized as time went on, that's not who I really am. It doesn't need to be always that way.
Yes.
And there's other versions of me and there's another way of being. And I don't have to be stuck on this one note.
I kind of see it like this great closet with all these, like you are a soul and you have this most amazing closet full of costumes.
Yeah.
This is the Riz costume. Maybe I had a lifetime where I had an Oriah costume.
Yeah.
And I was like you and I put that one on. And many of the spirit guides that come through, some of them have accents. So you go, oh, that's a British spirit guide or that's a Native American spirit guide. But the guides themselves have told me, look, this is just my favorite costume. I don't have an accent. I'm a transmitter of light and I am light itself just like you.
I know. It's so interesting. And I'm going to get to your birth story.
Okay.
Sometimes you channel.
Yeah.
And so of course, we're like paying attention to the guide and how they're speaking. Like Phineas Quimby comes as Phineas Quimby and Red Eagle comes as Red Eagle.
Yes.
And there's some people who literally in the comments, they'll like judge them. And I say to myself, these are energy light beings that can actually become anything they want.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting that you think that this is just one character.
They do. They think that it's really hilarious.
Funny. Okay, going back to the story that almost knocked me off my seat. So you remember giving birth?
I do.
That's crazy.
I do remember giving birth. I was deep in. I was half asleep. You know that stage before being, you're half asleep. You have a lot of visions. It's almost like you're dreaming while you're awake. That's a very.
It's like, is that lucid dreaming? No.
No, lucid dreaming is where you're very conscious that it is a dream.
Oh, okay.
This is just a state between falling asleep and being awake. Now, I have found that there's something about that state of being where a lot of artists or singers get great melodies at that time.
Right.
Because the conscious mind is kind of just relaxing and it's really open to a lot of creativity, just to put it simply. Well, for me, I start having visions. Now, sometimes I think it's just I'm starting to dream, but I'm awake. But then there's other dreams which are a little too real, a little too like I know this place. Okay, so
my God,
I was a tribal woman. I feel this was what's coming to me even now as I actually have never said it in this very moment. I already know it was Namibia.
Okay,
that's in Africa. I don't know exactly where. It's kind of weird because I know this past life experience, but I never had the country, and I just got it literally while we're sitting here. So I'm gonna go after this. I'm gonna look up Namibia, and I remember my skin tone. I remember the shape of my legs. I remember squatting. I wasn't laying on my back.
Oh my God, I keep getting chills.
I was holding onto a tree branch. So there was a tree and they had thin branches. I remember holding on with each hand. I was holding onto a thin branch. And then I remember when the baby was coming out, I held on really hard with my left hand to this thin branch, and I reached under my thighs and my butt, and I grabbed the head of the baby.
My God.
And I felt the head in the palm of my hand as I was laying there half asleep.
Wow. I can't even believe what I'm hearing.
I mean, I would say
that's incredible.
I would say almost, I hope that every man has that kind of experience because it changes you.
Yeah. Well, you're very well-rounded, male, female. I feel like I am too because I'm so connected to my male side.
It's the yin and the yang, right?
But I'm comfortable in my female. I wanted to say, when you said that, it just reminded me when we were in India, we were on a tour bus and we were cruising through, I think we're going to the Taj Mahal. And we were going through the countryside, and it's just in Agra, just nothing but farmland.
The long 3-hour stretch.
3 hours. And I was looking out of the left side of the bus.
Oh, I know what you're going to talk about.
And I was just like looking at these farm plots and land, and it was just the same
rice paddy fields.
Rice paddy, everything looked the same. And then all of a sudden we come across this one, I'm getting chills again. And I came across this one plot, and as I came across, it was like all of a sudden I saw myself walking, and I felt myself walking with like bushels, and I was short, and I had the clothes, but I felt a nostalgia and a missing and a homesickness. Like I felt immediately that I belonged there, not in the bus.
Wow.
And then I started crying, and then I started really crying, and it was instant from nothing to cry. I was just totally neutral, and then instant burst of something that I felt. And then we talked about that. I've seen people on our retreats when we go to Egypt, especially, I see people do that. And I see people fall apart at certain different areas. Like the Kings, we went.
The Valley of the Kings.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
People like
so weird.
freak out. They just are like, "Oh my God, I lived here." Like you could feel.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to travel, you guys. We have to do a show that's just on some of these sacred sites because it's amazing the things that we remember, especially if the vortex is strong.
Yes.
And there's lots of civilizations and lifetimes that people have lived in these locations.
Sometimes people say to me, why is the skeptics or people who are just curious to go, how come so many people remember all these really colorful lifetimes?
Yeah.
And I go, they were always a king or they were always I go, no, it's not that they were always that.
Right.
They've had hundreds, if not thousands of lifetimes. It's just that
like
wouldn't
Seth
you remember the one
James.
that actually has something that is very different than a normal, ordinary life? Wouldn't you remember that? So of course you're going to remember the one that was more colorful.
Yeah.
You're not going to remember the one where you just were just like, I don't know, hanging out and doing nothing and never really did anything and you were kind of boring.
Yeah.
We've all had lifetimes that were just transitory lifetimes,
Interesting in that past life regression that I did with the hypnotherapist. One of the past lives, I was a little girl around 12 and it was really sad, but I was abused and killed. And I relived it and it was so visceral and it was so traumatic that she pulled me out of the regression and she gave me some feedback and some notes.
That's like some Inception type shit, right?
Yeah,
there.
she's like, I have never seen anybody go as deep as you have.
Wow.
And that's why I was so fascinated. She says, I had to stay on way past your time.
Yes.
Because I wanted to see how far you would go, but then it got too visceral. And so she pulled me out. But
that's good. She was very wise to do that.
Yeah.
Because you can really, when you're working with those levels of consciousness, you can reprogram yourself incorrectly. So it's very important to be with people who can really do that job correctly for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I hope you guys really love this. This was amazing.
Yeah, I think we got to do a part 2 to this.
Yes.
This is amazing.
I just love this conversation.
We'd love to hear your reincarnation stories. If you remember your past lives or any comments you guys have, just drop it below and we're going to discuss it next time.
Absolutely. And share with your friends and like and subscribe and all that good stuff. And we are well on our way to 100,000 subscribers.
Ooh, I couldn't believe it. It was 85 today.
I can't even believe it.
So thank you guys for doing that. This is our
really
tribe,
excited.
our community growing because you are on the same page as us.
We have to have some kind of celebration or something on that day. The day that we get 100,000.
We'll get a little cake.
Subscriptions, we have to have a little cake and some candles, and
we can't give like you guys cake.
They can celebrate with us.
All right, get a piece of cake. We'll have a piece of cake. We'll be like, all right, let's toast cake to each other.
All right.
Thank you for making this community so big and strong and vibrant. We love all your feedback and comments.
Yes,
and we're happy to deliver this content for you. So please do share it.
All right. See you later.
Later.